much, so I will try to keep it short. I would like to start by thanking the organizers of the conference and Politikalarını for the very kind invitation and the excellent organization. As it was mentioned before, I'm based at the National Documentation Center in Athens. It's a research institute, and my work has focused over the past years in the implementation of open science, open access projects, mainly dealing with open access and open science policies. So even though this is my first time in Izmir, it's not my first time in Turkey, and we have an excellent cooperation with Turkish institutions in designing and in promoting open access policies. So I'm very pleased to be here with all of you. So in terms of my presentation, I will be talking about the Open Air Advanced Task Force on Policy and Legal Issues, focusing mainly on the policy part. Then I will present the Open Science Toolkit for both universities and research funding institutions, which is one of the key outputs of the policy task force. And then I will also refer to some of the examples of from other EU countries who are in the process or who have already implemented open science policies. And I will conclude with some issues, with highlighting some issues about ways of moving forward. Open Air is mostly known to most of you as an infrastructure project. Yet at some point it became clear that infrastructures and policies are basically two sides of the same coin, or mutually reinforcing elements of open science. As the Pasteur for a Way project was coming to an end, this was a project that the National Documentation Center coordinated. We had Hacettepe University from Turkey as a project partner, with a key focus on the promotion and alignment of open access policies. But at that time we were still talking about open access and not so much about open science. So as we were involved in both projects, in Open Air and Pasteur for a Way, we decided that it would benefit Open Air and the open science community if we could continue the work that we have been doing in the context of Pasteur for a Way within Open Air. This is a cooperation that started in a more informal, let's say, way in 2016. And with Open Air Advanced, it has taken a more formal role, in the sense that the project has created a policy task force dealing specifically with the promotion of open science policies. Early this year it was decided to merge the two different task forces, the one focusing on legal issues and the one focusing on policy issues, as we saw that there were a lot of issues that were common to these two task forces. So we thought that it would strengthen the work that we do if these two task forces join their forces. So what does the policy task force do? The work is coordinated by the National Documentation Center. We aim at obviously raising awareness about open science policies in the different European countries and obviously beyond Europe. We also aim at capacity building and enhancing the competencies of our network in terms of the different open science topics. And the key issue is also the exchange of information innovation and best practices. I think that especially the presentation given by Eva is very insightful in this way as to what we do within open air, in the sense that it's always good to hear the examples from other countries to see what has worked and what hasn't worked. And this is a way of, we believe, a way of moving forward. The idea is not one of naming and shaming those that are latecomers in the adoption of open science policies. It's quite the contrary. It's to help them by showing how others have managed to adopt open science policies, and in that way inspire them and also support them in very practical ways in doing their work. So obviously the ultimate goal is the reinforcement and obviously the alignment of open science and open access policy. Obviously one question is, why is all this fuss about the alignment of open science policies? Obviously each institution or funder can come up with their own policies and adapt a policy that they feel fits best their needs. But at the same time, we feel that with aligning the policies, on the one hand, it's easier for researchers to adopt open science practices, because in this way they don't have to comply to different policies. Imagine having a researcher that is funded, for example, by the European Commission through Horizon 2020, and at the same time receiving a research grant for a national funder who has like a different policy, and publishing a paper that they need to make open access, but these different funders have different requirements. So obviously in this way open science is not very appealing to a researcher. And at the same time it becomes more easier to manage for an institution. In this process and in the work of the Open Air Policy Task Force that we are doing, the NOADs or the National Open Access Desks are a central point. We refer to them as the national hubs for open science and open access policies. NOADs are basically the European network within open air, and they are like a central component of the work that we are doing. In Turkey, ISTEC is the NOAD. They have been doing an excellent job. The annual conferences that they organize, they are part of the work that they do within open air, and obviously you know much better than me of all the other interesting things that they do at the national level. So this is a very NOADs are a very important element of open air advance. They're the very soul of the project, and they have a key role in promoting open science policies. As I mentioned before, we started working more intensively since the beginning of 2017. And one of the key outputs of the work that we have done within the Policy Task Force has been the creation of what we call an open science, open access toolkit for policy makers. It comprises policy templates to be used by research funding and research performing organizations. Both of these templates are available on Zenodo, so you can download them and consult them. They were based on the Pasteur templates, but we felt that there was a need to update them as a result of this shift from open access to open science. And in order for them to have a more holistic approach, let's say, in the sense that They include research data and also other items of open science, such as they touch upon issues of citizen science, for example, or open educational resources. It's not a take it or leave it template, obviously, because different countries and different institutions are at different stages of development, so we do understand that it's not always easy to adopt a template as it is. Nevertheless, we feel that it's a comprehensive output that can guide institutions and funders in the adoption of open science policies. And the second key outcome are the checklists, again, to help research institutions and funders in adopting open science policies. Obviously, in discussing policies, a key issue is how to define a policy. Obviously, you can have like a law that is passed by your parliament if we're talking maybe about a national policy, but then you have also the national funder policies. You might also have softer type let's say policies again, such as research plans or roadmaps, or even agreements between different parties. The key thing to remember is that these are usually documents that include information about the scope, the roles and the responsibilities of the different parties involved. And they also touch upon issues such as compliance, monitoring, or the evaluation and the assessment of researchers. The structure and the content of the policy is also shaped by national factors. Obviously, the cultural aspect is once again a key issue, and also the existence of national infrastructure. In most cases, we've seen that infrastructure are the first step for the adoption of open access policies. It's not the other way around. Usually, countries first develop repositories, and then as a second step, they decide to adopt policies. I suppose because also it is a question of money, as again Eva mentioned, because repositories need money to be developed, whereas for the policies seem more easy to adopt, even though there are budget issues obviously involved when you actually proceed to implementing a policy. Throughout Europe, there are different types of policies. You have European-wide policies, such as the one of Horizon 2020, where all the researchers that are funded by Horizon 2020 need to comply in terms of providing open access to both their publications and data. They also have national policies, such as the one that was recently adopted in Cyprus, again, as a result also of the work that we have been doing in the context of Open Air project. You may have institutional policies, such as the one of the University of Minho in Portugal, or a funder policy, such as the one of the UKRI in the UK, obviously. And then, as I mentioned, policies can be of various types, ranging from harder ones, mandating what the different parties have to do, to more soft type of policies. I think that Eva mentioned before the Spanish case, where the requirement in relation to research data is quite soft. So obviously there you have a question about the degree at which the researchers will comply. So you see, when examining the different policies that are out there, the language that is used. You have policies that can either mandate, or they call, or they encourage, depending on how hard they want to be. As I mentioned before, there are a couple of elements that are key in the design of the open science and open access policy, starting from the description of the roles and the responsibilities of the different parties involved. Usually we think that the policy is only about the researcher in the terms of what the researcher has to do, but it's not just the researcher. There are also other parties involved. For example, if we're talking about the university, then the university might also have specific responsibilities in the sense of maybe providing training or funding the necessary infrastructure, for example, or providing support to the researchers in terms of issues that have to do with licensing or copyright. So it's not just the researchers that have to do things. Then we have the most known aspects of open access that have to do with publication and research data. So there, a policy needs to specify what types of publication or research data we're talking about, where the researcher would need to deposit, and also provide information related to copyright or licensing issues, and also about the need to have a data management plan, which is a key element in the management of research data. A lot of policies also have clauses relating to the review of the policy, and there it's also important for the policy to state who is going to and how often an institution or a funder is planning to review the policy. And obviously the issues relating to monitoring and compliance are also important. Otherwise, in most cases, you have a sort of a toothless policy, in the sense that if there is no way to monitor what your researchers are doing, and if there is no way to have a compliance mechanism, then we've seen institutions adopting policies, but at the end we're not doing much. In discussing open science policies, we feel that it's better to talk about incentives instead of punishing researchers, because it is it's a better way to encourage them and to take them more on board, instead of showing them that if you don't do this, then we'll cut your funding, or you're punished in a different way. And it's also important to see if policies somehow integrate all these open science practices in their assessment and evaluation procedures. And here we'll touch upon one of the issues that was raised with Paula. We were discussing about this yesterday. It's something that we do not focus on so much when talking about open science policies, but we also need to take into consideration the gender aspect and see how the policies may impact in the same or maybe in a different way on males and females. So it's important to have this in mind. For example, if we're promoting citizen science projects, yes, this is fine. This is under the umbrella of open science, but who is leading these projects? Is it again a male scientist? What is the role of women researchers? So in designing these policies, I would encourage you to also think about the gender aspect if we want the science to be really inclusive. And then again, issues related to training and awareness raising. Again, who does what? And talking about universities, again, it does not have to be that each university, for example, has to come up with their own training program. Maybe universities can work together and provide like a common training program for their researchers. So creating synergies is also important in this process. As for the checklist that I talked about, it has a number of statements to guide again the development of policies. It's not meant to show how good or bad you are, but rather to assess your readiness and see things that you might want to reconsider, for example. And just to give you an example, in terms of, for example, the reward and the incentive system, you might have a policy that introduces also formal criteria research and assessment of open science practices that integrates open science practices into the evaluation procedures. You might have you might move to a weaker policy where this is encouraged but is not embedded in the evaluation process, and even weaker policy is the one that does not have any related mechanism. I think that as we're running out of time, I suppose that I will go. I will skip the Serbian case, but I will just mention, and it's something that I think also applies to the case in Turkey, that they have created a working group in order to develop and adopt their open science policy. So if I can give you some concluding tips, let's say, I would encourage you not only to identify the relevant stakeholders in your country, but maybe think about creating a working group, which I know that you have already been doing in a quite successful way. I don't know whether the national coordinator role has come up in your discussions, but following up on Eva's presentation, maybe it's something that you would like to think about. It's also important to identify the key issues that you would like to work on. If you feel that research data at this point is important, I know that you have just created a related group, so this is very good. And if you have any further issues that you would like Open Air to give you further support, either through your NOAD or through the policy task force, obviously we would be more than happy to help you. This is our role. I hope I was not too fast, but we would be very happy to discuss the design and the adoption of policies in Turkey further with you. So thank you very much for your attention.